City Current. Produced by Dakota Media Access. In-depth discussion with Bismarck and Mandan city officials. Watch on Government Access Channel 602 HD or tune in to Radio Access 102.5 FM. Always local, always current.
Coming up on City Current, we'll talk about a number of safety improvements through DOT grants. We'll take a look at the ETA boundary discussion and see what's next for that. And last night at the City Commission meeting, update on the keeping of chickens within city limits. Thanks for joining us. I'm Tom Gerhardt from Dakota Media Access, and joining me, Jason Tomanek, City Administrator for the City of Bismarck. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
It's the seasons are changing, but one thing that doesn't change, City Commission meeting.
Second and fourth Tuesday of every month.
That's right.
On the Bismarck side of the river.
That's right. So last night, a number of interesting topics. Let's start with some discussion about DOT highway safety improvements. As somebody who grew up here, I found these interesting. 4 improvement opportunities within the city of Bismarck. This map's a little tricky to see, but we'll walk through them. The first one we'll talk about is up by Century High School and Gateway Mall, which is a very busy
Popular pedestrian crossing
Yeah.
right there with the high school on the north side of the street. You've got Gateway Mall and some food attractions on the south side of the street. And then when you've got events and activities at Century Avenue. And then, of course, you've got the volume of traffic, 2 lanes in each direction, 35 miles an hour. So the request would be to install I believe they call them the rapid rectangular flashing beacons. Those are a button that's activated by a pedestrian. Prompts some brightly flashing lights on each side of the street to help motorists recognize that there's a pedestrian in the corridor, and they need to slow down and give the pedestrian the right of way because there is a marked crosswalk at that location.
As someone who, I'm thinking of Washington Street up north, when the pedestrian hits that flashing strobe light, it really does catch your attention as a driver, as a motorist.
7th Street, 9th Street, both by Bismarck
Right.
High School.
Yep, that's another place.
Previous projects under this same highway safety improvement grant through the DOT. So I'm glad that we're seeing more of these in the community because you're right, they do attract your attention as a driver, and we're not just putting them everywhere, we're putting them in strategic locations where they're necessary.
Here's the second location. This is Washington Street and Avenue B in the historic cathedral area.
Another pedestrian corridor, we've got elementary schools that kids are traversing through, and obviously a very attractive neighborhood in our community. A lot of people like to just get out and walk. This is a very walkable neighborhood with short blocks and beautiful tree canopy and wonderful architecture to look at. We've got a church just on the west side as well, so another good candidate for some pedestrian improvements as well.
I was out cheering for my son and a number of others during the Bismarck Marathon a couple of weeks ago, and it goes right past the third place here on our map, which is the Riverside Park Road south of Memorial Bridge. You can see the bridge there at the top, and as you mentioned, that crosswalk arm had been taken down.
It's no longer operational. Our Streetlight and Traffic Signal Division within Public Works Service Operations did everything they can to keep that crosswalk blinking and active, and it is just not able to stay online. So here again, they'd be looking for double-sided flashers and signs on both I guess it'd be the east and west sides of Riverside Park Road. A lot of us still call this River Road, but the name changes right by the bridge.
I didn't know that. I learned a lesson last night. And super popular place for people riding bikes, joggers, walkers.
It's definitely a trail connection for that whole Riverside Trail network that runs along the corridor there.
The fourth is Airport Road and Lee Avenue.
This is an interesting one. Lee Avenue, of course, east-west street that connects between Airport Road all the way over to 26th Street near the South Walmart. One of the things that we learned through a study that the Metropolitan Planning Organization did that was called the Safe Routes to Services, for many that recognize the Dream Center on Park Avenue, Dream Center offers services, primarily meals for people throughout the day, and Lee Avenue has become a corridor for people to walk between the South Walmart. There are other services and uses along that Lee Avenue route. But this is an area where we do have a high volume of pedestrians, and we do not have sidewalks throughout the entire corridor. So the fourth of four improvements here would be to fill in the gaps and install the sidewalks, and then also similar to what we did along Expressway, close to that Washington Street, 3rd Street area, there's a center median. There would be a pedestrian refuge area between the 4 lanes of traveling public, but then also another pedestrian activated rapid flashing signal beacon in that area as well.
So that passed out of, the commission passed that unanimously. And then we'll move on. It's kind of hard to keep these, I think, separate as just a citizen watching on the city commission. But the next was DOT transportation alternative funding programs. And there's a couple of other projects that I wanted to talk about and show people that would be in the works for the future. And the first one is requested trail rehab, and that's you can see if you look about between the 2 red boxes would be I-94 running east and west, so that gives you a little bit of an idea along State Street of where this trail rehab would take place.
Yeah, we're talking about the trail just on the northeast corner of the Capitol grounds, and it moves north along Highway 83, up along Gateway Avenue, and then there was a trail extension from Calgary Avenue up to 43rd Avenue that was completed in 2024. Typically, these trails are built from asphalt, and asphalt has a useful life, and when that trail starts to deteriorate, cracks start to form, it becomes harder for people, especially someone with rollerblades or small wheels on maybe a skateboard or a stroller or whatever the case might be. So the request is to rehab the older section of that trail. And I guess I should mention, Tom, these potential grants are through the North Dakota Department of Transportation. They are ultimately federal grant dollars, and there is an 80-20 split. So there would be some cost share for the city for any of these projects, but 80% of it would be covered through the through the federal grant that's initiated and then distributed by DOT.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you added that big piece of the pie there. The second grant would be, and this is a little bit tricky again, but this is the Claremont Family Conservation Park.
Mm-hmm.
And the red line you see would be from just off Tyler Parkway, and that would be a added paved shared use trail.
Correct, and it would tie down into Claremont Road, which is that main roadway off of Burnt Boat Drive up into the Promontory Point and Elk Ridge neighborhoods. There would be a paved trail extending off of the stub of Gulf Drive, which is the road between the funeral home and the bank.
Yep.
Paved trail down into the coulee and then back up nearly paralleling Claremont Drive. But then also Commissioner Risch asked if some of the trails that are established in the area, which are currently unpaved, they're just a single track hiking, walking, biking trail, will those be paved? And the answer was no. So there's going to be a blend of paved surfaces, but then also traditional natural surfaces, which are in many cases established in the Claremont Family Conservation Park today. So I'm glad to see these different ways to access existing trails coming forward, and just further bolstering the connectivity of this wonderful trail network that we have throughout the community.
Nice to have paved, but I know a number of people that like those single tracks are
trails.
Fun.
If
They're
you
fun.
have the right equipment, they can be a really good time.
That's right. Moving on to the third piece, and that also through this is urban grant funding program, I should say, 2 projects, and this is completely replacing the signal here at West Broadway and Washington.
Correct. This is one of the, I guess I'll call it a legacy signal, meaning it's not on our current network. Much of the traffic signal network has been improved over the last several years by connecting them with fiber. So we can monitor these things, we can work with these things from a central location at the Public Works shop on 26th Street. These older traffic signals are different. They cannot adapt to the new systems. They're timed differently. They don't have some of the same safety features that new technology has. Turn signals, we're seeing a lot more dedicated and flashing yellow arrows at some of these major intersections. Those are the types of upgrades that we would be seeing at both Broadway and Washington Street, and then up the street a few blocks at Rosser and Washington as well. it was pointed out by the city's traffic engineer, Chris Holzer, last night. The Rosser Avenue corridor is a pretty significant one for emergency response, and I'm thinking primarily ambulance.
Yeah.
We've got both hospitals on just off of Rosser at 7th and again at 10th Street. Having emergency vehicles traveling from Mandan to the hospitals makes a lot of sense that they're coming through this Rosser Avenue corridor. To have the new technology so those first responders can move through the intersection more quickly without, conflicting traffic from both directions. I think that's another nice side effect that comes from these improvements, is we're further enhancing safety features as well for those that need them.
And for traffic flow, these left turn arrows, I think, have been a major
They're great.
improvement.
Yeah, and as a guy that lives here, drives here, I wish we would have had this type of technology in the past, but the fact that they're here now, I think it's really wonderful. I also heard Chris say, with the pedestrian activated crosswalk, the pedestrian actually gets about a 5-second head start before the lights turn green. So
Right.
It gives the pedestrian a little bit more time to work through the intersection, again, further enhancing safety. So we've got just all these nice new features that are available thanks to the technology. And if we're fortunate enough to receive these grants, then we will see these improvements in the not too distant future.
Yeah, well, thanks for breaking that down and taking the time to walk through it. Again, I found all of them really interesting to see what potential improvements could be made or would be made if those grants are come through in the future. So then let's move on to the ETA boundary discussion, and the beat kind of goes on there. But last week the combined commissions met, and the city provided a proposed map. And so just back us up a little bit and tell us what happened last week leading into last night.
Sure. So the Bismarck-Burley Combined Commissions Committee is composed of Mayor Schmitz from the city of Bismarck and myself. From the Burley County side of things, it's Commissioner Steve Bakken and the auditor Mark Splonskowski. So the four of us are on a pattern. We meet the first Tuesday of every month, and it's to continue to collaborate and share information and what projects that we're both working on. But lately, yeah, it's no secret we've been talking about the ETA and the extraterritorial area, and so this is the jurisdiction that the city of Bismarck has outside city limits. It relates to development, it relates to planning and zoning, and ultimately future land use. From the city side of things, this is a very important tool for us to help negotiate as we continue to grow. We've added 20,000 people in 20 years, and it isn't by accident. We have been very intentional about the extensions of infrastructure, meaning water and sewer, roadway networks, traffic signals, all the things that go along with growth. What Burley County had proposed at that meeting was a much different map, a much smaller, virtually zero extraterritorial area, and they were, I think the volley came from the county commission to say, Bismarck, trust us, let us handle your growth, and when people are ready to annex, they'll come to you. Appreciate that sentiment, but we are poised and will continue to plan for the future of the city of Bismarck. We have corridors that we need to be able to maintain, primarily Highway 83. We've got the area to the north and to the east along I-94 and up into the Silver Ranch neighborhood, and then certainly to the north and to the west as well. Those are very key areas of future growth for the city of Bismarck because we can extend water and sewer and all the other services that come in incremental steps along the way. I guess the proposal that Burley County offered compared to the proposal that the city offered, the city's offer to modify the extraterritorial area recognize that there are a number of established rural subdivisions that are around the city, and the likelihood of the city ever annexing those properties is extremely slim in my lifetime. And when I say annexation, what that really means is the city's ability to provide service. Water, sewer, police, fire protection, garbage collection, those are the services in addition to a number of other things. If we can't provide water and sewer to a neighborhood, we have no business annexing them because we would be taxing them without being able to provide the service that comes with it. So for the rural subdivisions that are out there on the edges, a mile out, the likelihood of the city coming in and being able to provide those services is very slim. And by recognizing that, The proposal that the city offered to modify the extraterritorial area would remove 95% of the existing residents within the ETA. And when you break that down and maybe say that a little differently, in my mind, what it is doing, it is continuing to preserve those raw land corridors where we know there will be urban growth. We're not opposed to rural subdivisions. We're not opposed to people having larger lots with larger outbuildings, and we get that. That's a lifestyle that people appreciate in Bismarck and in Burleigh County. What we are looking to do is to systematically continue to grow the city footprint of the urban density. And by doing that, it helps support the city of Bismarck because House Bill 1176 capped property tax at 3% over last year, but it does open the door for new tax on new construction. Not only is the city of Bismarck collecting tax on that new construction in city limits, but so is the Bismarck Public School District, Bismarck Parks and Recreation District, and Burleigh County. Every time something is built in the city of Bismarck, all 4 political subdivisions will capture the property tax off the value of that land. With that in mind, I'm certainly not a Burleigh County Commissioner, and I'm not trying to tell them how to do their jobs, but at the same time, I believe Burleigh County benefits from the growth of Bismarck without really providing any additional services or resources for those places. To me, that's kind of the crux of the issue here. We've got 2 different sides. There really hasn't been much as far as concessions or compromising, and I think it was Commissioner Zenker last night that noted there really hasn't been a tremendous amount of teamwork between the county and the city. Staff, we generally work well together, but at the same time, this is kind of an elected officials thing that's going on back and forth, and I'm trying to tiptoe around that. That's not my role. I don't want to get into that, but at the same time, the North Dakota Century Code and the United States law allows extraterritorial areas for urban cities just like the city of Bismarck, and we're not changing the rules. We're not acting any differently than we have. This has been a decades-long commitment to organized urban growth. And our commissioners spent a little bit of time talking about the map that Daniel Nairn had prepared.
You could throw that up again and not to interrupt you, but
Sure.
maybe in a second have you kind of explain to those who are watching.
Absolutely.
what you
So
see.
for those that can see the screen, we've kind of got 3 colors to really simplify it. The center color, the light yellow tan color that you can see, that is city limits today. And you'll notice that it is not a square box. It is a very squiggly line that carves out specific parcels that we can provide services to. And keep in mind, the city does not force annexation. The city responds to a request for annexation. If a landowner is ready to develop their land, meaning turn it into a neighborhood, a subdivision, a commercial corridor, whatever the case might be, that landowner applies for annexation at their request. Then we work through that. Can we extend services? Can we get the utilities to that property? Does it make sense? What do the roads look like? All of that goes into this discussion. So we're not out grabbing land and saying, you can develop here, you have to develop there. That's not how this game works. So the tan color is city limits today. The immediate green color around the outside, that is the area that we are comfortable growing into. And by growing into, I mean the extension of water and sewer and all the services that I've continued to mention. The kind of gray color or the hatched color that's on the screen, those are the existing areas within the ETA that would be given back to Burleigh County. Many of those areas are some of the established built-out subdivisions. Some of the area is raw land that could be developed into the future. But those are the areas where we, as the city, would struggle to be able to provide the services that we continue to talk about with water and sewer. So where the commissioners left it after last night, essentially there will be 3 options offered to Burleigh County, and I believe it is our intent to request a position on their agenda for next week. 3 options. Number 1, status quo. We keep the entire negotiated ETA and we don't make any changes. Number 2 would be to accept the map that's on the screen today as presented with a few minor tweaks. We did hear from some residents out on that kind of northeast edge that said, I'm not sure you're really going to get to me in 20 years. And our planners said, you might be right. We'll take a look. We'll make some minor adjustments there. Or the third option, and the commissioners talked about a joint powers agreement. That is an understanding between the two political subdivisions that this is how we will collectively work together. I guess kind of the third option would be to ignore the JPA and go to the full 2-mile boundary that the city is afforded through the North Dakota Century Code, and that's the answer.
So it's volleyed back to the Burley
Volley
County
back
Commission.
to Burley County Commission.
And then depending upon how they react, that'll set the future in the 3 options that you just described.
That is my understanding. That is my hope. We've spent a lot of time talking about this. I know this is a subject that gets a lot of people excited, but at the same time, there's thousands of residents that are living in the ETA that, quite frankly, haven't said anything. We haven't heard a lot from people that support the ETA. I understand that if life is good, why do you need to change? But if you're somebody that opposes the ETA, if you're opposed to one of the common themes that keeps percolating, and the commissioners addressed this again last night, the comment about not having representation, not being able to vote for the commissioners that are making decisions in these urban or rural subdivisions. North Dakota Century Code simply doesn't allow it. If you don't live in a municipal area, if you don't live in a city, you can't vote for city commissioners. We can't change that. That becomes state law. But because you and I that live in Bismarck, we are also Burley County residents, that affords us the opportunity to vote for city commissioners, Burley County commissioners, school board members, and park board members. But if you live outside city limits, you can't vote for city commissioners.
And we did hear, not to extend this conversation, that there have been a couple of bills historically before the legislature that haven't really gone anywhere.
Haven't materialized.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we'll see what happens next week and go from there. Another hot topic last night, the keeping of chickens. There was a amendment. There was an appeal of a previous denial, if I have that
Correct.
language right.
Yes, you got it. So the process for modifying an ordinance, in this case it's a zoning ordinance that would allow the residents of Bismarck to have chickens within their personal property, within their yards. The process to create a new ordinance starts with staff doing the research, developing the draft language, working with stakeholders, committee people, doing the research to see how could this work in Bismarck. The group that went through this previously kind of rejoined and tuned it up a little bit, changed some things around with the ordinance, and proposed the keeping of urban chickens again. And the Planning and Zoning Commission, on a mixed vote a few months ago, voted to deny or not recommend support of the ordinance. So typically, if that's the case, the work stops there. However, as with many things, there is an appeal process. And Commissioner John Risch, who sits as a city commissioner, is not part of the City Planning and Zoning Commission, but is an officer of the city, requested to appeal the decision of the Planning and Zoning Commission. So last night, Tuesday night, what we saw was Jenny Wolmuth with the Planning Division within the Community Development Department brought forward the request and presented the information. And there was some discussion at the table. Commissioner Risch is certainly a supporter of the idea of having urban chickens, and he pointed out, there are neighborhoods in the community where we've got flocks of turkeys, we've got geese, we've got deer, we've got a variety of pets, exotic animals, from reptiles and amphibians to the fuzzy pets that we all like, the cats and the dogs. And it was Commissioner Risch that respectfully asked the commissioners to support the appeal, which would then allow a public hearing at the city commission table. The mayor shared his concerns with chickens at large. He, of course, is part of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and noted that he did not vote to support the ordinance when it was at that point, and remarked about some concerns with fire hazards. If you've got winter, you've got livestock, you've got to be able to keep them warm, and there could be a potential for straw, heat lamps, things like that would cause problems. But at the same time, he noted that there are many neighborhoods in the community with covenants that just simply wouldn't allow chickens in their areas as well. I think another concern that was raised was the idea of chickens at large. So our police department is not interested in catching chickens. Obviously, they deal with cats and dogs when they have to, and that's a little different scenario. But the place to keep a loose chicken, we don't have one. We've got a kennel for dogs and cats, and that it would take an investment on the police department's part to house these things, try and find the owners. I don't think there's a chipping system for chickens right now like there are dogs and cats. So I'm not sure. I'm not interested in having chickens personally, but at the same time, the motion was made to call for the hearing. Unfortunately for Commissioner Risch, who was in favor of this, there were only 4 commissioners at the table last night, and the vote went 2-2, which means it died for lack of majority. So the request to appeal, to bring the conversation to the city commission table, to have one more public hearing on whether or not we would allow chickens in city limits, was not successful. So
Maybe you can answer this. Is there a way it comes back in the future after last night's decision?
I certainly don't want to say no. There would be a way to start over and invest the time and energy again. I guess I've thought about that as the city's administrator, as the person that's watched a lot of staff time get invested into this topic, and it really hasn't come to fruition, and now this is twice. I'd be pretty cautious about encouraging any type of chicken talk in the near future. We've been down this path on 2 separate occasions. We've had different commissions that have weighed in. There just isn't the support. I understand from the citizens' perspective, there are people that are very interested in this, and it's my understanding this isn't just a cheap hobby. You're not going to suddenly save a bunch of money because you're collecting eggs. The front-end investment in this is in the hundreds, if not thousands of dollars by the time you get a chicken coop and the fencing and the animals and the feed and all the things that go into it. And I'm sure like any other urbanized animal, pet, whatever you want to call them, there's work that goes into keeping them healthy, keeping them clean, keeping them safe, and all of that. So I think that the comment was made at one point that there are a small number of residents that are very, very interested and supportive of this, but the vast majority of Bismarck is pretty ambivalent and just not there. And so the idea of writing law for a handful of people in a community of nearly 80,000 residents, it's probably not the most practical use of our tools. But I understand both sides. I understand the passion and the interest and the education and the 4-H and the experience for a kid and a family and sourcing your own food. I get all of that. Again, I'm personally not interested in that. I don't mind getting my eggs the old-fashioned way by going to the store, which isn't really old-fashioned, I get it. But
Well, I asked the question, and I appreciate the answer. Just I think a component of the show that I enjoy is the educational aspect, understanding how city government works, and in this case, is this a dead issue, or would there be a chance to come back? So not trying to strike up any controversy or further movement, but just trying to understand the process or pass that along to people watching. Well, finally, you were able to come up at the end of the commission meeting and talk about organizational structure for the city of Bismarck. And you have a plan that you presented to the commissioners last night that lays out some changes.
Some changes, and the changes were brought forward as a result of a departure from our organization. And we talked about this on a previous episode, previous program. Our former community development director, Ben Arith, resigned in August. His last day was in mid-September. Rather than just move forward with posting the position and trying to find another leader for that department, I was able to just take a deep breath and step back and look at what we have as far as resources within the department. Who do we have for talented leadership and staff in those roles today? And it also gave me the opportunity to look not just at the community development department, but also our finance department, which has what we call divisions. It has subcategories within the department. So community development is the department. The divisions are the planning division, the building inspections division, and then we have the metropolitan planning organization, the MPO, the long range transportation planners, and then also the housing and urban development and community development block grant, HUD CDBG. That's the current composition of community development. The current composition of the finance department is fiscal services. That's the folks that are handling the money, paying the bills, receiving the checks and the payments. We've got information technology, IT, and then we've also got city assessing. And so just to kind of shorten this entire conversation, the recommendation that I brought forward last night was to dissolve the community development department, but then to create or to stand up a planning department and a building inspections department. We've got two very talented individuals that have been leading those divisions for a number of years collectively, and quite frankly, they are ready to lead their own departments. And the IT department, which has been housed in the IT division, which has been housed in our finance department, frankly has outgrown the leadership of our finance director. We've hired someone who is a CPA, a former auditor. He's a numbers guy. He's not an IT guy. They are two completely different worlds. And just the evolution of this organization, we continue to grow and we continue to become more diverse. We've got to pull out IT as well. IT is in every conversation because they are one of the internal customer service departments that impacts all city departments. So in the end, what did we end up with? Mixed support, but the majority supported the request that I made to create a planning department, create a building inspections department, create an IT department, promote those three individuals that are managing those divisions today to department director positions. But then also the assistant city administrator position, which is the one that is held by Doug Wiles. It's the position I had before being the city's administrator. The role of the assistant administrator will be changing as well. And the assistant administrator will be very much ingrained in the work that is done by our growth forward developments, those that are helping support the growth and infrastructure of our community with engineering, public works services, public works utilities, and now planning department and the building inspections department. So those five, Doug Wiles will key his attention in on those areas, not to necessarily oversee their work, but to learn from them and the work that they do, because the growth of our community, I said it earlier on this program, I said it last night at the commission meeting, the growth enabled the city of Bismarck to have an additional 1.5% over the 3% cap for our budget for this year. That is a tremendous opportunity for us, which means if we're going to continue to rely on that type of additional funding for the organization, we need to focus our efforts on continued growth and very sustainable and intentional growth. And by Doug having exposure to those five departments and being ingrained in that process, it further bolsters his knowledge and understanding of our entire organization and why it's important to support those things. I'm fortunate coming from the planning department I worked there for 10 years. I was part of all of that and understand how it all fits together. For any assistant city administrator, I think that is a critical component to their knowledge base to realize why we do what we do in the sake of supporting growth and development. And so some of Doug's efforts will be focusing on those five departments. Collectively, we will manage the other departments that are internal customer service, be the finance, IT, human resources, and the legal department. And then I will be able to focus the rest of my attention on those other departments that are not development related. So public health, police, fire, the library, the airport, the event center, and so on. So a pretty interesting change for us as an organization. I look at it as an evolution of who we are. I said this to the commissioners at the meeting. I believe this works because of the people we have here today. We have extremely talented professionals that are doing wonderful work. And I want to recognize that, but then also lift them up and help them get better at those jobs, provide better service to the community, provide better leadership to their departments. And by kind of diversifying the roles that Doug and I have as the administrator and assistant administrator, I think it just amplifies all of that, and it's going to push us into the future.
One concern was fiscal impact, but I think people can rest easy in that regard.
Correct.
Maybe you don't want to get into the whole thing, but it sounds like there'll be minimal, if any, fiscal impact with these changes.
Correct, because we're taking the former community development director position and converting that to a lower graded position, a lower salary. That position would become a code enforcement officer that would be part of the building inspections division. But the three individuals in IT, building inspections, and planning are managers today, and so when they are elevated to the director status, there is a slight salary increase, of course, there's no secret there, but the savings that will be realized from removing one director position to create a lower grade position will offset those adjustments, and I think in the end we're very close to a net zero, if not an overall savings to the entire organization by making these adjustments.
Well, a lot happened last night.
It was busy.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, I had a teacher conference last night, so I wanted to remind people that they can download our app because I listened to part of the meeting on Radio Access 102.5, and then while we were waiting to talk to some of the educators, I called up the DMA app and found a quiet corner and watched another 10 minutes or so. So you can watch us wherever you are, however you can. And we invite you to download the DMA app and the Radio Access 102.5 app. Jason, thanks for joining us. Thanks to all of you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on City Current.
For more information on what was discussed in this episode of City Current, visit bismarcknd.gov or call 701-355-1300. If you have suggestions, comments, or issues you would like addressed in future episodes, contact us at info@freetv.org. This program airs on Government Access, Channel 2 and 602 in HD, or on Radio Access 102.5 FM. It's also available as a podcast on radioaccess.org and as a video viewing link at freetv.org. Thanks for tuning in to this edition of City Current.